Wrestling Chat with Friends, the Tuesday show. Thanks for joining us for episode 3, where we're talking about all things WWE and NXT when we get around to it. I'm EJ the Collector. I'm joined by our friend, your friend, my friend, Tom 2.0. He was the Ultimate Warrior, and now he's changed his gimmick. He's repackaged himself. Tom, how's it going? How are you tonight?
It's good. I'll pick something new every week.
Perfect.
I keep people guessing.
I love it. Well, before we get started, let's just remind everybody that we can be seen on Facebook on our Wrestling Chat with Friends group page. I've sent a lot of invites out lately and gotten a lot of great responses. So thank you, friends, for joining and supporting the page. We're at WCWF Pod on Twitter, and the shows goes out on our YouTube channel also. Go to YouTube, search Wrestling Chat with Friends, subscribe, like, and tell a friend. All right, before we get started talking about WWE, I have we'll just get to this real quick. I have the new PWI 500 that has come out. Most people know by now that Roman Reigns was number 1. I don't know how much you've seen of it, Tom, but you got any issue with Roman Reigns being number 1, the PWI 500?
No, the only thing about the PWI 500 is I've never really had a handle on how much of it is supposed to be a kayfabe ranking and how much of it is supposed to be who's the best wrestler. And it seems like that they have tended to be more who the best kayfabe wrestler is, in which case obviously is Roman Reigns, but sometimes they'll kind of go in a little more towards the other end of the spectrum. So no issue whatsoever with Reigns being number 1. I mean, he if I made the list, he would be number 1.
What I've also noticed about these things is they do really take into account all areas of wrestling all over the world. Yeah. So it's not, and even casual fans now are probably more aware of New Japan than they used to be, say, 20 years ago. But there's still some wrestlers, maybe in Mexico or the Caribbean, that have the skills and the chops that get them into like the top 15, where most even casual fans might not have heard from them unless you're really diehard in those particular organizations. I'm talking about AAA or things like that. Do you get into those organizations much, either actively or on YouTube at all?
Me, not at all. No, I am a probably the definition of the casual fan, especially at this point. I mean, I basically, it's if you have a national show on cable TV or in the case of WWE Network, I'll watch it or at least fast forward through it. And even with that, I'm only barely aware of NXT. Like I record every week and fast forward through it, but I'm not super locked in on that. So that's very superficial. I'm a much more focused, I guess, or have less time, depending on how you want to look at it.
I got you. Well, on Friday, September 23rd, last Friday, SmackDown was in Salt Lake City, Utah. Again, on the stick for, I guess, the second or third week since college football started has been Corey Graves. He's pulling double duty with Michael Cole on Fridays and then Mondays with his normal Monday Night Raw crew. I was concerned about losing McAfee because I think he's so good on SmackDown. Corey Graves, I thought would be great. They're going to use him every week, and they're going to use him for this first week with McAfee's gone. He has slipped into the role fine. So if he doesn't mind the traveling, I think that's the best scenario to have Corey pull double duty. They used to have guys do that all the time. You got any issue with Corey when you want to see somebody new?
No, I like what I like about McAfee is that he's so different, and especially when he first started, it was such a nice sort of refreshing change of pace for WWE because he was the one announcer they had who really wasn't a WWE type announcer, meaning he wasn't really there to do as much shilling and he was a little more unpredictable, and that was interesting. But I do like Corey Graves a lot. I think he's a good WWE heel type commentator. So I have no issue with that. It doesn't detract from the show. I'll be happy when McAfee comes back because I do like having that sort of mix of one thing on Monday night, one thing on Friday night, but no issue at all.
Even before the numbers for SmackDown viewership came out, I guess on Saturday, I think everyone knew this was going to be a big audience Friday night because of the teases through social media of something happening this night, possibly with the White Rabbit. The QR code from the previous week had indicated 9/23, which was the date of the show. So I think anyone who was aware of this White Rabbit instance was certainly going to be trying to tune in and it did a monster number. We'll talk about the show and then we'll talk about how well it did. And the show was monster because it opens up with just the hottest thing in wrestling right now. the Bloodline. And in my notes, I wrote the Bloodline with Sammy and Heyman. Is it the Bloodline with Sammy and Heyman, or is it the Bloodline with Paul Heyman? Because Sammy, after Friday night, seems firmly ensconced in the Bloodline. They all came out. For a second there, it looked like it might have been over, and they were going to kind of send Sammy packing, thus kicking off this, I think, inevitable feud that Sammy will have, hopefully with some help, against the Usos. But they instead presented him with an honorary Us t-shirt. A great t-shirt. Our producer Mark tried to buy it immediately and it was sold out. It's going to be the hottest shirt of the year. Sami Zayn is doing Academy Award winning work right now. The floor is yours, Tom. Sammy's your guy at the moment, I think. Tell me what you thought of this particular promo, what they're doing with him, and the work Sammy's doing.
For starters, easily my favorite segment of the week, no question, on either show. I think that when you look at the Bloodline storyline overall, it has done something that I think is exceedingly rare in wrestling in general, and also probably even more rare in WWE, both because of the attention, the level, the spotlight that WWE gets, but also because of WWE's sort of historic tendency to run things into the ground. Like if they have a good thing, it's like, we're going to just ride this horse until it breaks down. But the Bloodline storyline, they have been able to sustain it for 2 years and kept it interesting. Now, of course, there have been highs and lows where it's been more interesting, less interesting. But 2 years in, and it is as hot right now, I think, as it has ever been. And that is a huge credit not only to creative and not only, of course, to Roman Reigns, but also to Sami Zayn, who right now, both in terms of character development, mic work, in-ring work, is hitting it out of the park on all fronts. I think the other thing about the storyline is that, as you just alluded to, it really provides wrestling and TV just in general. Unpredictability is good sometimes, but it's also fun when you can kind of see something on the horizon that you're excited about. And this is an example of that, because I think, again, as you just alluded to, I think where this is headed is, in my mind, this storyline, the status quo progresses, enhances over the next month or so, leads to probably a Survivor Series match with the five members of the Bloodline, meaning, the 4 actual family members and then Sammy, in a Survivor Series 5-on-5 traditional match. Sammy inevitably either takes the pinfall himself or is perceived as the one who cost them the match. It's the first match that they will have lost, clean. And I don't know, Roman Reigns hasn't been pinned for something like 1,000 days. And when you get to that point, then it gets really interesting. Sammy, obviously, they could turn him face anytime they wanted to. He is going to be mega face once he turns. I think they're smart to save it, probably for post-Survivor Series. And then I think, as you have talked about, I think he pairs up with his old best friend, Kevin Owens. I think they go after the tag titles, and they're the ones to unseat the Usos. And it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
Is WrestleMania shaping up to be the final collapse, implosion of the Bloodline? And Roman's going to drop the title, Usos will lose the title. I mean, this seems like it's been the plan all along. And especially if you didn't have a plan for this beforehand, hopefully you're seeing what's going on and saying, well, this, and it is predictable a little bit to people who were in the know. But if they don't do anything except that, then this is sort of not going to pay off the way I think we all kind of want it to. But the result of that's going to be the Bloodline, the most dominating force for 2.5 years, is going to implode at one point and seemingly all at once. Are we okay with that too? Is that going to hurt anybody?
I think, I don't know if it's gonna if it's gonna be an implosion where they just all scatter and are no longer a faction together. I see them more possibly, especially because, hey, Ali, how you doing?
Hey, Ali has joined us. Thank you. Good to see you, my man. How you doing?
Great. Are we talking about how Scarlet stole Chris Jericho's gimmick?
we haven't gotten there yet, but that's a tease for later. We're talking about the opening segment of SmackDown with the Bloodline and Sami Zayn and the Great Swerve and Tom's. We're predicting now how and Tom, let's pick it back up, but just like what this inevitably means, it sort of sets up WrestleMania to be sort of the final, where they're going to walk out. We're going to Raw after WrestleMania, and no one in the Bloodline is going to have a title. That seems to be where we're going.
Yeah. So two quick things on that. I think to answer your question, Elliot, I think number one, I think a lot of it depends on what winds up happening, what they have lined up for Roman at WrestleMania. And I think right now that's an open question. Of course, it seems most logical that it would be, the pipe dream is The Rock. It could be Cody. It could be somebody else. It could be Bray Wyatt, dare I say it. And so I think that's going to be a big piece of it. I don't think you're going to see an implosion in the sense of the Bloodline as a faction just ends, not yet. And I think one of the sort of the tells about that is the inclusion of Solo Sikoa. I don't think that they would elevate him to sort of main roster status, put him in that group, and then just have it peter out or implode, whichever you prefer, in like 4 months. I see them as more of a heel version of sort of how they have done the New Day. Now, it may not be that long of a time because it's easier to maintain a face faction for that long. But I see them as being something that, it's been 2+ years now. I could see it going, to 3 years, perhaps, maybe even a little beyond that. I do think, though, to your point, it becomes tougher because of the way they've been presented. Once the Usos, say, drop the tag titles, it becomes tougher to sort of maintain the Bloodline as we have known it. So down the road, yes, I don't think it'll just be like all of a sudden they just go their separate ways.
Yeah, I think what'll make it a lot different than I want to get Ali's take on it will be, I think the wrestling world and certainly Triple H is thinking about planning for a 2023 that probably might not have as much Roman Reigns as the previous few years did, either by way of other projects or breaks. So that Bloodline, with or without Paul Heyman, could become more of a trio with these brothers, and then the storylines that can be woven in with them if they eventually, decide to go at it as singles versus each other or anybody else. Yeah, the Bloodline will certainly change after WrestleMania, probably not disintegrate. Ali, give me your thoughts on how good Sami Zayn is right now. Is there anything better than Sami Zayn? And do you sort of agree with where we're thinking this kind of the road this is taking?
The only way this could get better is if Sami Zayn showed up on Raw and SmackDown and just danced for the first 10 minutes of every show. That's the only way I see this getting better. What I love about it is like every person in this feud, every person in this story, in that ring, had their own story. And I don't know that, I know that during the Vince era, we always thought, okay, there's timelines on these groups because Vince hates groups. But like I could see like the Jey Uso stuff bubbling up. I could see Sammy and Sikoa doing their own thing. So I don't know that it's going to implode anytime soon. Honestly, it could keep going for another few years. This is the most exciting group since the Shield. And so I think it could keep going. And I think Sammy brings a lot of life to it. And there's a lot of fantasy booking we could do. Does Sammy turn face and then team up with Kevin Owens? Does Sammy go after, I don't know. I don't, as much as I would love to fantasy book Sammy as like this ascendant babyface that could challenge Roman Reigns, I don't see it happening. But I do see him, continuing to be like the underdog, proving his value. Yeah,
this storyline will remain the A block, kind of going forward for several more months. A storyline that, should be.
Can I throw out one last thought before we move on from this?
Absolutely.
Something that we have referenced.
All right. Well, we know who that's coming from.
Yeah, I love the Hurt Business. I actually temporarily forgot about the Hurt Business, and that ended way too quickly.
Mark, our producer, same thing, but swap in maximum male models in my head. So,
yep.
So the one thing before we move on, something that I've referenced in the past that I still think can be part of this mix in terms of how storyline presentation or different ways that they go with the Bloodline is, I still think that there are some very solid creative ways that they could split the titles so that Roman, remains, say, the Universal Champion, but the WWE Championship goes to somebody, he loses that to somebody else, or vice versa. And that gives you a whole other avenue of, Elliot, as you said, like if they do with Roman, sort of like make him what Brock was a few years ago, where you have one champion who can be, in the main event of a lot of your pay-per-views, but then you have another guy who's sort of a special attraction type who's holding the other title. It works a lot better creatively than if you have a timer who is tying down both titles. So that's another possibility for the future.
No doubt. No, let's keep talking about championships, because on SmackDown, Liv Morgan, the women's SmackDown champion, took on Lacey Evans, who had heat for a while. That came back from commercial, and like the women's champion was like halfway to the ring. They're not putting as much effort into it, but credit to Liv. She is making the most of this opportunity. We saw an aggressive Liv, as she needs to get aggressive for her upcoming match against Ronda Rousey at Extreme Rules. Lacey lost every bit of her push. She was definitely a Vince,
Yep.
feature, and that's it. And I think Triple H probably is giving her time, but isn't going to invest much more than being just sort of a jobber. I see someone like Nikki Cross having a better upside than Lacey Evans at the moment. Deservedly so. I'm not saying that Nikki doesn't deserve that, but yeah. You want to talk about Liv and how she's being booked, Liv versus Rhonda? Let's just do like real quick. Do we have any thoughts on this upcoming? Is Rhonda going to take it off Liv, or is the magic going to continue?
I mean, Rhonda has to take it off of Liv, right? But also, this whole match was so confusing to me. I get that you have to build up Liv, right? Because instantly you're like Rhonda versus Liv, that everybody knows where that's going. But then, so in this match, she's supposed to be like this babyface, but that is supposed to be more extreme, right? It's supposed to be more ruthless to get ready. And I saw what they told Lacey to go do out there. You got to go out. You got to put over Liv. So Liv takes 90% of like a beatdown throughout this whole match, and then at the end turns on the heel when the heel's already down. And I'm like, what? I don't feel bad. First of all, I don't buy that she's extreme, and I'm also not rooting for her as a babyface after she beats up the heel after the heel's already beat up. This was so confusing and honestly terrible, and I felt bad for everybody involved.
Gotcha.
I think where they're heading with this is Liv will turn heel. I think Liv's going to retain, and it'll be sort of a double turn. Like Rhonda's sort of a bit of a tweener. I mean, technically she's a face, but obviously a badass,
she's
legit
a bad
MMA, all that. So she does have that edge to her, and she does things like, beats up WWE officials and things like that. I think this is going to be a double turn, which is where they're headed. I agree with you, Ali, that right now they're sort of stuck in this middle ground that's confusing, but I think after the pay-per-view, it'll be like, okay, I may like it, I may not like it. It kind of makes more sense. I think
they could have fixed it by doing one thing, which was your table spot and your kendo stick spot happen inside the match. She then puts Liv through the table and then rolls her into the ring and pins her, and that is how you show she's extreme. It's a really simple fix, and it would have fixed everything.
I tell you what, I did notice when she did hit that table spot and the camera panned in and she gave her extreme mind, she was having a hard time not smiling and cracking up because she was feeling it. Crowd was giving it to her. I think she's really enjoying this moment and making the best out of it. But, to show her extreme side, then I kind of thought it was endearing that she got a tight shot. She delivered her line, and I think she just was soaking it in. I'm glad the camera caught it.
I mean, she took a crazy bump. That's a definitely props to her as an athlete. And I always cringe when they take these big bumps. I just wish it was placed differently in the match.
Anything with the tailbone freaks me out. I'm just like, God, that's one of those things where it doesn't. There are a lot of things in wrestling that look super painful that, based on what I've heard in interviews, are not as painful as they look. Anything with the tailbone, that's one thing where people are just like, it hurts so bad.
Tables scare me too because they're like edges. I think there was an AEW match the other week where was it Sammy? He got too close to the edge of a table. We all know about Julia Hart's spot last week, we're
grateful for watching a WWE again is like it's so much safer. Yeah. I mean, I saw that spot where what's his name fell onto like the edges of the chairs, like his spine, like Ricky Starks' spine hit the edge of the chair. And I'm like, dude, you have like a central nervous system there. Like,
Yeah. We can deviate just a little bit to send our thoughts that we're glad Julia Hart was okay. That was an ugly spot she took the other night. Missed the table completely, and also, probably just broke down a real, like, inadvertently broke down a real fourth wall in wrestling with the way the corner of that table broke. That was one of the first times you ever saw just like how that thing's constructed and how that table is supposed to break, when she basically missed it. Yet when her, I don't know what it was, her ass or whatever, when she just it took out just like a chunk of it, it revealed this sort of gimmick table, I think, to a fan. Anyway, yeah. All right, moving on with WWE. Julia Hart, I think she's the most attractive woman in wrestling. I've never revealed that publicly. Julia Hart, I think, is overall
secrets out. I guess
best looking.
Will always belong to Athena.
Best looking female wrestler. Anyway, all right, we're getting way off track. Mark's probably laughing back there. Anyway, New Day is still together after all these years. I love it. They were the latest to embarrass Tom's favorite tag team. But that story took a giant leap forward because Max Dupree, formerly known as LA Knight, hopefully future known as LA Knight, seemingly walked out on the group, gave up. Are we going to go another few weeks with this, or are we waiting to when?
I want Finn Balor to show up and recruit them into Judgment. Wait, listen.
That's a Judgment Day.
You got to join us and AJ Styles, okay?
That would be so. I think that's where it's headed.
Yeah.
I'm just genuinely curious, like, what the kayfabe explanation is going to be for the fact that this dude who was LA Knight, like, showed him on SmackDown as a different person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in the history of wrestling, of course, this happened a million times, but not in like the way that they have presented
not
it.
so quickly. I still think of him as Eli Drake.
I still think of him as Eli Drake too. I sometimes struggle, like, it's like, oh yeah, LA Knight.
He made LA Knight a character that was like,
he was great.
A lot of people forget he was Eli Drake. Honestly,
he was really good in that role. I think he's been good in the role as Max Dupree. I think that. I mean, obviously, I'm wildly entertained by the whole thing.
It is entertaining.
But I just don't know. Like, well, they'll think of something, but it will be really interesting to say, like, how
is he going to start wrestling again? Do you think? Or
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, which would be good. I mean, that's one of the positives, I think, of him reverting to LA Knight will be that he can get back in the ring. And again, this is one of those things that was a Vince thing. Vince saw him as a main roster, manager or mouthpiece or whatever, and he's certainly good at that. But I think Triple H, and obviously NXT was evidence of this, sees him as an in-ring performer, and so that's
he's got the look, he's got the size. I don't understand.
It really sort of makes me think that Adam Cole come to the main roster manager rumor was probably true.
Oh,
I think there was some truth.
Yeah, if they can do that to Eli Drake and LA Knight, that I could see him doing it to him too. Anyway, so that's going to develop, and I think we're all looking forward to seeing an LA Knight character return.
Does anybody know, like, what? Is there a prognosis or a timeline for Big E? Is he going to be able to return?
If he's been told that, he hasn't given it away. He has kept very upbeat in his Instagram with his recovery. He's not wearing a neck brace anymore. I don't know if it was 4 or 6 weeks ago. It was reported he had I wouldn't say a setback, but it wasn't progressing as well as he had hoped for. He has sort of said, Mark's saying not this year, right? He's not going to be really evaluated, I think, to even be considered until a year out, which would be about March. Yeah. So
the good news is that so far they've learned that he might, aside from being an elite athlete, that he might be able to live a normal life aside from having to be a competitive elite athlete, and that's hugely good news. So Huge. We're really thrilled for Big E for that.
Absolutely.
So for everything else, we just got to wait and see.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure Triple H just doesn't. He just knows. Nope. We could be at best we're talking SummerSlam, but that's probably not even going to happen. Nope. I kind of don't even want to make predictions. I want Big E just to be healthy and live a long, happy, healthy life. New Day for as long as they last is going to be a duo, unless they merge with the Hurt Business. Who knows? It could happen. You never know. They got one more heel run in them, I think, perhaps. Speaking of heels, Braun Strowman appeared on SmackDown. He didn't appear on Raw. We'll get to that, but he appeared on SmackDown. He and Otis wrestled. I still don't know what's going on with Braun Strowman. Let's table Braun and save it for Raw. We'll get to that segment later, but nothing yet is happening with Braun. I think there is, because like he's just coming out and just squashing somebody, and whether local talent or now with this Alpha Academy, I think he's part of a bigger plan, and we'll get to that shortly. Drew McIntyre cut a really good promo until he was interrupted by Scarlet and Karrion Cross. Did you know Drew McIntyre had food poisoning all week?
I heard that after the show. I didn't know it during the show. Yeah,
he sacked up for his promo, but he was taken off the road over the weekend shows. He had a rough go with it, but he cut a great promo. And then Scarlet, Karrion Cross, they made their way to the ring. There was the sort of what Karrion put him to sleep.
I heard what they were trying to do, but I don't know about you guys. I noticed like several times where like this just fell apart, where like people forgot where they were supposed to be or something. And I'm like, this would have been so good if it went on flawlessly, but there were so like one or two missteps that might have been okay, but it just, and then like the fireball, which I popped for so hard, but also was like also mistimed and was so far away that Drew couldn't even pretend to sell it.
Yeah, fireballs have like literally like a 20% success rate.
I was just gonna ask, like, what in the history of televised wrestling, like, what's the batting average on fireballs? Like, how bad does it have to get before people are like, God, there's another way to tell the story?
Jumping out of his chair like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme, being like, what?
Hulk Hogan botched a fire spot back in the day.
Yeah,
I think Jake Roberts botched a fire spot. I've seen Dusty Rhodes miss a fire spot. Did y'all catch? I think this is what Cross said as they were fading away. This is exactly what we wanted. I heard we wanted. Anyone hear we? And then he said, "Let it go." So
he said that before when he had him in the sleeper or whatever it is.
Now, "Let it go." It hasn't been directly referenced in these White Rabbit trailers exactly, but it's referenced. I thought I heard him say, "This is exactly what we wanted." So for the moment,
I think that's what he said. I just assumed that meant him and Scarlet.
And Scarlet. That was the question. Is it him and Scarlet, or is there a bigger we here at work? We're going to get to it right now. Okay. So
he now speaks in the royal we.
All right. So there were other matches. The main event with the Usos and the Brutes, they did great, but forget it. I want to talk about the White Rabbit and the theory I heard this week, which I think is, if I could book it, this is what I want to have happen. Is Bray going to come back with a group that we have already seen on TV? And I'm talking about Karrion Cross, Dexter Loomis, Braun Strowman, and Scarlet. They have proposed. The internet has proposed that each one of them is a specific character that was in the Firefly Funhouse. Dexter Loomis was Mercy the Buzzard. Braun Strowman was the little piglet that was running around. Scarlet is the witch, and Karrion Cross is the rabbit. Those were his four main characters. Is that what do you think? Ollie is wrinkling his nose. When I read that, I thought, wow, that's actually sounds awesome. That's the new Wyatt family I want. Talk me out of it. Tell me why that's not the coolest thing you've ever heard.
It is cool. And what I love about this is that I'm not into this kind of fantasy booking, but I love that people are interested and watching for little things, as opposed to just a few months ago, we were all zoning out. We were like, we can barely watch this product. It's so
Yep.
So that's cool. I don't know if that's where it's going. I hope not. I don't think so. I'm more convinced now that it is Bray Wyatt, and I was just thinking it must be like a new version of his gimmick. That's why they're pulling the rabbit out. A new version of the Fiend, perhaps. I don't know. Real quick, I do want to say, I know we're not talking about the Usos and the Brawling Brutes, but
we'll get back to it.
Well, I was watching, and I'll just quickly say, I was like, is this an AEW match? Because it was like good, but better than an AEW match. But anyway.
WWE has really been focusing, I think, on wrestling the last couple of weeks, and I felt Raw had even fewer sticky stuff.
There were so many false finishes. I was like, ooh, this is an
fewer
AEW.
even promos. Like wrestling, it was there were 5 matches on 1, 2, 3. There were 5 matches on SmackDown, 6 matches on Raw. That, you know, and the women's match on Raw, which we'll get to, took up the first half hour. I think they're giving these matches time. That I wanted to bring that up too. And if you guys are not on the same like White Rabbit hype than I am, we can move on from it. But Tom, I want to give you a sec.
Let Tom talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said this last week. I think it's Bray. I think it is possible there could be a group of some sort, a new Wyatt family or whatever it's going to be. Again, primarily, I think that only because of the fact that they, I think, really want Survivor Series 5 and 5 matches now. I don't know that it's going to be like that there are clues and it's going to be the people that you just named necessarily.
Okay.
Possible. That hadn't really crossed my mind. I will say, back before all this White Rabbit stuff started, when Dexter Loomis showed up and Karrion Kross showed back up, I did think I didn't connect anything to Wyatt, but I did think I wonder if Triple H is going to have basically an NXT redemption faction of some kind and put all these people together, not necessarily an invasion angle, so to speak, but something along the lines of if Retribution had been really, really good instead of terrible, that kind of concept.
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, it seems like they're kind of doing their own thing. And again, as we'll talk about, Dexter Loomis is somehow a face. So, it doesn't really make sense. I do think it's Bray. I think that there's so much interest in this that they're gonna wait for a big show to really pull the trigger on the big reveal. I think that initially they may have been thinking, because like you said, Elliot, I know you follow this really closely. There have been these breadcrumbs that have suggested it's going to be, Friday night on SmackDown, or maybe it's going to be Raw or whatever. I think now there's enough interest has been generated by this, enough buzz that they're let's hold off until we get to, Extreme Rules at the earliest, but maybe even push it, later, depending the night after. I don't know. But I'm convinced it's Bray. I'm convinced
the creativity at work here. You've heard people who have talked about working with Bray. It's just, Triple H said it with Ariel Helwani a few weeks ago. Some of the craziest creative mind he's ever worked with. This feels right out of that crazy creative mind with these QR codes and these subtle references. And
when you mentioned all the characters in the Firefly Funhouse, you left. Well, I guess you didn't leave them out, but the rabbit. If you recall at the end, the rabbit was supposed to be Dean Ambrose. Do you remember that? That was when he left. Anyway, we don't have to get into all that, but that was something that was really sort of subtle that they did, where the rabbit was.
Breaking news: Tom predicting Jon Moxley returns to WWE.
That's not at all the case. You're taking my comments out of context.
Well, we know SmackDown is becoming more exciting every week. This is Triple H. Triple H, we I think from January to maybe July, it was sort of fait accompli. Tony Khan, Booker of the Year, Promoter of the Year. How the tides have turned, and Triple H is, and Tom, our producer Mark Cheats has talked about this. When WWE has the experience, it has the ability to turn your lights out. If they feel threatened and they want to show what a superior product is, they have the ability to do that. There appears to be an opening where everything that was restricted by one senior citizen's daily wild, decisions drove everything. And that's not the case anymore. It is definitely, we're seeing it, complete new generation. So over the weekend, they continue playing White Rabbit on the house shows. So they're going to keep pushing that thing. It's crazy creative. I love it. I can wait another month or two if we get these little breadcrumbs every week. On Raw, they flash the QR code again. And something else I'll ask you about. We'll get to that. So, pardon me. Raw was on Monday, September 26th in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. You guys ever been to Canada? Both of y'all visited? Enjoyed it?
I have not. I've been to Detroit. That's as close as I've gotten.
I've been to Toronto.
I've been to Vancouver. Canada is fantastic. Our friends in the north. They opened Monday Night Raw, WWE's flagship show, giving 35 minutes to, I think, the hottest story in Raw right now, which is Damage Control versus the faction of Bianca Belair, the ladies champion, Asuka, and Alexa Bliss. They each gave promos. I get the promos were okay. And then immediately turned into a match. Bianca and Io. How did she pronounce her name? Io Sky. Io Sky.
Yeah.
Those two put on a banger. Those two are two fantastic female wrestlers. Yeah. I was enjoying. I think we all got a treat in that first segment. Ali, what'd you think of that?
Yeah, I was glad when they stopped talking because I was like, this. I was hoping this would start gelling with like Asuka and everything, and then it just wasn't. And then they got Io and Bianca in the ring. I was like, oh, thank God, this is good.
Yeah, this is next week at Extreme Rules. We're going to have Bayley versus Bianca, although Asuka and Alexa, they are not competing for the tag title. Okay, so like what are those ladies' motivation for sticking behind Bianca if they're not trying to go for the tag titles? Is placeholders, or what are we doing?
Because they're faces. I don't know.
Because they're faces.
There's not a whole lot of story there.
No.
I mean, and I love Asuka. I really enjoy her, but she's been ruined over the last couple of years. Like, remember when she came in and she was undefeated, and it was like just like Goldberg, and ironically, AEW is doing that story way better with Jade.
They sure are. So this is all we're gonna have the blow off next week with Bayley and Bianca. I'm looking forward to it. Bayley seems to be pretty much back at 100%. I think she's got her ring rust off, and Bianca is about the best thing going right now. Her power is really impressive. So they will definitely entertain us next Saturday night.
Yeah, that feels like a big deal. Like it feels like a big deal.
It does. Will it main event, do you think?
Oh, I don't see how it. Well, I mean, it depends on what else is on the card, but
yeah,
I don't know. It should.
It should. It definitely could.
It could.
I think that the answer to that question depends on if they're going to pull the trigger on whatever the White Rabbit stuff is. Whatever has a connection to that would main event. So, for example, if Alexa Bliss, given her history with Bray Wyatt, is somehow tangentially connected to that, then I know, but I'm saying she would be in the vicinity of this match, presumably, and so therefore it could main event.
And that's not her. The Bray stuff is not her fault. She's gotten a lot of flack unfairly for that Bray stuff. Yeah. She was great on her own without that.
She was good as she should be. She should be the character she was like 4 or 5 years ago. That's the character she was born to play.
Sort of was partially what's her name? Joker's girlfriend. Sort of, she was like a little bit of
Harley Quinn.
Yeah, she had a little bit of like the Harley Quinn crazy energy kind of thing.
What I still like is that those ladies are out there giving it their all. Each of them entertain me every week. I like all of them. The storyline I'm getting a little sick of, is Ray and his boy Dom. Like Ray, buddy, I love my son too, but he clearly doesn't want to hang out with you right now. Like, I don't know if I'd dedicate this much time
to ready to accept that Dom has been domed.
Yeah. I don't think I'd dedicate this much time to my own kid if he treated me like that. Is this going to carry on until WrestleMania, or are they going to try to blow this off beforehand? Like
Dom's facial expression is how I feel.
Dom versus Ray is, what I would have imagined at WrestleMania is what I would have imagined if I was Ray would have wanted for my son. But like, we're not going to keep doing this for 6-7 more months. He went out there because of some interference again by the Judgment Day. He took a loss to Rollins. Rollins and Riddle are still going at it too. They're going to have a pit fight on Extreme Rules. That's awesome. But I'm personally ready for Ray to, either join Judgment Day or get involved with somebody else. Feud with Edge if you have to. Like I don't know, but it's no longer
capturing off to other shows. This is all getting stale.
Yeah, as I like to say, poop or get off the pot.
Yeah,
I think we've reached that point in this story. I think the only reason I don't think it's going to be WrestleMania is because I don't think, look, something could happen because now they're sort of doing stuff with AJ Styles is kind of involved a little bit, and maybe that's going to go somewhere. But on its current trajectory, I don't think the Judgment Day is sustainable for that many more months. I mean, they really never win. And I just don't think, unless they somehow add some more members or develop in that way, I just don't think they just come off as like
they need
sort
to
of
winning.
a high class jobber stable at the
I
moment.
believe, which and that stable, aside from Dom, is anything but jobbers. Rhea Ripley, I believe, is rehabbing some injury, so which is why. But she is great in her role right now of playing this mommy character to Dom, and I see her.
I like how she calls him Dom.
She fits the Judgment Day stable, what they're trying to do, more than Finn Balor does, in my opinion. If Finn Balor's not the demon, he has no business running this stable. I'm not sure what happened with that, but that sort of all fell apart. So Rollins, continues to be a highlight of Raw. He's got the whole crowd singing with him, and his future hopefully includes more gold, but it's getting crowded now that the storylines are getting tighter and more compelling. Even with 3 hours, that time is becoming a little bit of a factor with all these guys. So they're, Rollins certainly is making the most of it. A tag team that apparently was like 10 years in the making, Gargano and KO, took out Alpha Academy. Alpha Academy, one of the better jobber teams out there. Like I kind of I enjoy them.
I thought they did great. I thought they did great.
Chad Gable, I can see Chad Gable having a long career as a jobber, as a trainer, as a coach. Sort of, he's great. Otis, doesn't have much charisma except for that short period where he was just caught lightning in the bottle a couple of years ago.
See, I disagree. I think he does have charisma. I think that they really, really, there is nobody, in my opinion, in wrestling who was hurt more in terms of like push, etc., by the pandemic than he was, because he was Mr. Money in the Bank because of momentum that he acquired, because he was so over as a face with live crowds. They loved him. And then once the live crowds went away, Vince, of course, is like, wait, why are we pushing this guy? Like, I don't get it. He's just a kind of a big roly-poly dude. I don't get it. Let's turn him heel. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the death knell at that point. So, but like he was, there were Raws where he was the most over face on the show.
I almost started watching Raw again just for him.
Really? I remember it. I probably was not as tuned in during a little bit pre-pandemic. It sort of always begs the question, like, well, he was sort of sweet and endearing, sort of in a lovable, goofy way, but it made me think earlier, like, what is there such thing as too sophomoric in wrestling?
I mean, I think if you asked Vince McMahon, he would say, absolutely not, pal.
Yeah. I mean,
it's entertainment, pal.
Between Scissor Me Daddy Ass, why is that?
That's pretty sophomore.
Okay, so why is that so awesome? And why is, say, some other, why is tossing pancakes into a crowd, seemingly so over, but just so some sophomoric stuff works, some doesn't. Like, what is it? Is it eye of the beholder? I have the wrestling fan. I mean,
let me pull it back real quick and just say, going back to Otis, I was super excited about the Braun Strowman Otis match. That was actually one of the matches I was looking forward to the most, and I was so disappointed because I didn't expect Otis to win, but I thought, okay, this is a chance for Otis to show off that he could be a badass. He's going to get a little bit of offense in, and like the whole match was awful. And I think there were a few missteps. I don't know whose fault it was. I don't know if it was Braun's fault or not, but I saw a few sort of missteps, and they recovered quickly. And then it just kind of fell flat. And I didn't feel like it made Braun look all that great. They reinforced the ring and made a big deal out of it, but then the ring didn't collapse. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, but back in the day when they did the same thing with Big Show and Braun, they reinforced it and then it collapsed. And I was like, that's what I was expecting. Instead, I got an underwhelming power bomb, and that's it. And I'm like, right. It seems like they don't believe in Otis, and he's going to be a temporary jobber guy until he finds another opportunity to break out, which is sad.
There are several people right now, we've talked about some of them in the past, who are so good in, either in a face role and their heels or in a heel role and their faces. And I think Otis is one of the most striking examples of that, where he's a guy who is like sort of a natural face, and they have him as like this silent sort of beefy guy that hangs around with Chad Gable, and it's like, I mean, they're a good tag team. The match they had, I thought, on Monday was really good, or Friday because it was New Day.
Right.
But it is what it is.
It is what it is. Somebody who we might not share the same confidence in their ability, but they're young and we're hoping the best for them, is Omos, who you can't teach what he has, but he went out there with MVP, took on some local Canadian talent. I guess Triple H is putting him on there to remind them, like, we still have this guy who, like, if in a couple of years he could be, because he's 7'5" and he's menacing, but what are they doing with him?
He's a once in a blue moon guy. You bring him in because he can't do a lot, right? So you bring him in as the monster, and he crushes people, and then you have a big penultimate match with him where it's short, and he puts the babyface over, and then he disappears for a while. I mean, I don't see him being able to carry storylines. I don't see him really.
Is he taking anyone's spot right now? Like, is there anyone who's we don't see that much that we, it's a long show. You got to fill 3 hours. So
I think they brought him back to TV just to set up an inevitable conflict with Braun Strowman.
If you're not gonna keep what's his name, Dabo Kato, Captain Aziz up there,
Commander Aziz,
Commander Aziz. I mean, those are the guys. Shanky hasn't been seen in weeks. He had a gimmick that was
coming forever.
Mm-hmm. Veer is another one.
Veer, he was the guy.
That's right. Veer was the one who was coming forever,
right?
And then he came, and
now he's back on NXT.
He's back on NXT.
I think they moved him down to the NXT roster.
Don't be surprised if you've heard this rumor that Veer is going to be at Crown Jewel facing none other than Bill Goldberg. Stop it. They feel they need to bring out Bill Goldberg for Crown Jewel. It hasn't been announced. Plans may have changed, but dirt sheets were reporting that WWE is looking to bring in Goldberg for Crown Jewel.
I'm shoving my head in the sand, and I'm going to tell you it's not true. I didn't hear you say that. But I do want to know this is random, talking about my brown peoples. Where's Jinder Mahal? Is he injured? I mean, if Omos is wrestling, how are you not going to let Jinder Mahal wrestle?
Jinder shows up he was semi-regular for a while because he was like playing the foil to Shanky for a while.
Right, he and Shanky were team.
But in the last month, now they've sort of rotated him out. I'm sure he's on every house show somewhere, facing guys. But yeah. All right. So probably the second best thing that's going on right now, or third best thing behind White Rabbit, behind the Bloodline, is Dexter Loomis. I totally blew it and didn't talk about last week when he was when he cut through the ring and stuck his head up and tried to pull Ciampa down there. Last night. Now, did y'all, as soon as Miz introduced his Miz crew and you saw that thing, that you saw the player in the jersey back there, did y'all know that's how it was going to end? Y'all saw that, right?
I actually did. I mean, I saw Miz Force in that whole segment, but I did not know that's how it was going to end. I didn't see that coming.
I was half paying attention by this point.
Well, I was watching because Loomis has showed up like in the background sometimes. So now in Miz segments, I'm sort of watching carefully to see what might be running around. I'm also got White Rabbit in my head. Like, this is a hard way to live, gentlemen.
You're very clearly like locked in on this White Rabbit stuff.
I really am. I'm really excited because I really want it to be Bray, and it's being done so well that I'm probably going to be mildly disappointed, but everything we saw with Bray Wyatt had Vince's fingerprints on it.
Yeah.
Bray unleashed, especially if they kind of really lean into the creepiness, which is kind of always right up my alley with professional wrestling. I like the theatrics of it, so I'm definitely thinking of this. So yeah, as soon as I saw this there, I guess they were in Edmonton, and I saw this mannequin. I was like, yep, that's how he's going to present himself. And that it is what happened. Miz always finds himself, for someone who's very concerned about his own safety, he finds himself alone quite a bit. But they did the tease where when KO was walking through the back with Gargano, they saw one guy down, and finally there was a pile of them. And then Dexter's right there. and Dexter sort of like chokes out Miz, lulls him to sleep. That's makes me think he's showing Miz mercy. He's Mercy the Buzzard. I'm telling you, like that's where it's going.
I would like to go back to like 1989 and explain to a wrestling fan. In 2022, there's going to be a story where one guy is stalking this other wrestler and his family, and then the other wrestler is like fears for his life and for the safety of his two young children, and tries to get like security to stop this other wrestler. And the guy whose family is being stalked, he's the heel, and the stalker who's insane,
right,
he's the face.
Right.
And I think that the person I was talking to would just assume that we had devolved into some kind of dystopian future, which we kind of have.
Which we kind of have.
To be honest.
So we are tracking this perfectly. Yeah.
I'm embracing the Dexter Loomis sort of manic Nicolas Cage kind of energy. I've always thought Nicolas Cage would be a great wrestling gimmick, and I'm hoping that that's what this is going to turn into. I'm still crossing my fingers that this is a family storyline where Dexter Loomis is related to The Miz.
Related to The Miz. So that begs the question: if it's not working,
mezzanine,
the way I've worked up in my head is that this is part of the larger storyline with Bray. If it's not, and the stalking angle is in a silo by itself, what is it about The Miz that has gotten Dexter's attention? Like, where is that going? And is that how he's going to stalk his next feud victim? Like, it's got to be part of something bigger, I believe, because it's so far gone without explanation, and it's gone now over a month. So, and they're not. It's not like they're wrestling at Extreme Rules. So
yeah,
it feels like we've watched wrestling long enough. It feels like it's part of something bigger, but you never do know.
This might only work against The Miz. I don't know that this could work against any other heel.
Right.
We talked about this at the end of the show, Elliot, last week, but when we realized we had forgotten to discuss it during the show, I don't know that there is another heel that you could have the storyline with who would remain a heel with the story. Like, I can't think of like a scenario where, Jay Uso or somebody like that, like they come to his house and is like messing with his family and stuff, and Jay doesn't immediately turn face. But The Miz is like, people are just like, boo, boo, we hope he gets your daughters, boo.
Well, there is a history of that in WWE. Do you remember when Daniel Bryan's heel gimmick was that he cared about the planet?
Oh yeah,
so much. Tell people to
loved it so much. His championship belt was great.
I almost pulled the trigger on a hemp replica title. Yeah.
Right. And he was the heel. He's like, "Where the planet's dying, and you guys are all driving SUVs." And they're like, "Boo, we hate the planet."
Yeah, the thing is that in WWE there's a history of the substance matters less than whether or not you are obnoxious. And there's nobody more obnoxious than The Miz. So you can be like Kurt Angle, All-American, gold medalist, blah, 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 like drink milk and stuff. But if you're obnoxious, like, sorry, you're the heel. You're the heel. That's the way.
Well, guys who are our age just can remember Miz. This is what Miz, when he was 19 years old, this is what he wanted to be.
The Miz, same deal.
Yeah, so his dream is coming true, and good for him. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. So
100%. I am one of the biggest sort of apologists for him ever. And when people talk about like, oh, The Miz, I don't like the Miz, I'm like, in every way that matters in terms of like sports entertainment, like he checks every box. Like he gets it. He does it right.
He sure does.
He works hard, but I'm not into him as a wrestler. I don't think he's all that great in the ring. I don't really like.
Oh, he's not. I completely agree with that. He's average in the ring, but he again, the sports entertainment part of it is what he completely gets it.
Yep, he sure does. We had another return. Triple H has brought another wrestler back into the fold, someone who was there before. It should come as no surprise. It was the wife of Johnny Wrestling. Candice LeRae showed up, was introduced as she was facing Nikki ASH. Candice got the win. Another one, it's great. We all saw it coming, and I think this really loads. The female division is loaded right now in WWE. It's got a lot of good talent. So, and there literally could be two of the bigger names returning at some point this fall, this winter. So there is a lot to be looking forward to. I've heard rumors that it's possibly Tegan Knox to be brought back into the fold at some point. Gigi Dolan. Is she in Toxic Attraction?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. If a main roster push for her, adding someone like that to Damage Control, I think Survivor Series is going to probably be for the women also. So Damage Control probably needs another member at some point. So I expect to see somebody else. It probably will not be Candice LeRae. She sort of aligned herself Monday night with Asuka and Bianca. So that seems to be some Survival Series stuff starting to take shape. Nikki ASH, I think, is due for a character change. My vote would be,
it's coming.
I think Crazy Nikki was the best Nikki. So, latch her onto this White Rabbit Bray Wyatt train and go. It sounds perfect. Yeah.
She would be a good Bray Wyatt match. Alexa, I don't think so, was a good fit, but that's an interesting idea. I'd never thought of that. And
Crazy Nikki is great.
She's got a lot of great natural charisma. She's got a great in-ring charisma. I've always been a huge Nikki fan.
If they, when they teased a little bit several years ago that Sister Abigail was going to be an actual character, they never really teased it too much, but there was always speculation that, they bring a female into the Wyatt family fold.
Oh, right. And then it ended up just being Bray with like a Catholic veil or something.
It was just sort of like they didn't introduce Sister Abigail as a character. I thought, that Nikki Cross, but before her, when Paige debuted, I thought Paige Saraya would have been a great Sister Abigail too, but she turned out to be an amazing single star herself. But I think they're overdue for some, and maybe it's Scarlet, but yeah, a Crazy Nikki joining Bray, or just herself tearing through the division like like Abaddon and AEW. Yeah, I'm all for it. Give me more of that. All right. Then Sammy came out. Sammy, our favorite. He wrestles AJ Styles and gets the pin. I did not see that coming. I thought Sammy was going to keep kind of getting the raw end of the stick, wrong place, wrong time. But that is I won't call it clean because Sikoa definitely interfered, but they gave Sammy the win over AJ. It probably probably done to give Sammy more of this rub in the bloodline, and also to keep AJ a little bit conflicted because Judgment Day offered another invitation to him. So where do you see? We've talked a lot about Sammy, but as we near the end of the show, what do y'all see with this AJ? Is AJ just sort of the next feud for Finn, or is something bigger going to happen with those two? Because it is sort of like it's a C storyline right now. It doesn't mean much, and these guys probably deserve more. But thoughts on where AJ goes after this defeat?
I think it could be cool, especially if Triple H is trying to revamp. I mean, Judgment Day already feels a little more serious than it has in the past. And I could see AJ joining them, and maybe then they start winning. Because AJ's a big deal. They love him backstage. Like, really love him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're going to perpetuate the Judgment Day storyline, you have to do one of two things. You either have to add another member to freshen it up, or you have to have them get a big win in some kind of major setting, spotlight. And so far the latter hasn't happened. And Edge versus Finn in an I Quit match, it seems like that's going to be a win for Edge. I mean, maybe it won't. Maybe something will happen, and that'll be sort of how they get momentum. But if that's another big high-profile loss for them, they got to get momentum some other way, and maybe AJ, one way or another, is sort of the avenue to that momentum.
Well, I mean, we're talking about there are just so many segments to fill this time up. Now, the Bloodline and that storyline has sort of enveloped Sammy. I think we all agree it will envelop KO at some point, and it keeps all those guys busy. Then you have this secondary arc. The Judgment Day arc has sort of gotten AJ. It's got Edge. It's got this, and which leads,
right.
And it has that. So, and then Rollins, I guess, is on this other path with Riddle, and there's not too many. There's like three, I guess, main storylines. This, I think, is the most poorly run one. It's just they're shuffling these guys out, but these are some of the top stars you have in the business. So you have to showcase them and feature them. I just wish they were doing a slightly better
all
job.
of this that they're dealing with Judgment Day and kind of digging them out of this hole to try to revitalize it is due to a bad creative decision, which was when Judgment Day started, the original concept that Edge had and presented on TV, I thought was great. And I thought like, oh, and he can add, I mean, it's a natural fit because there's so many people who are sort of in that category of, you know, again, non-cave, like shoot, misused, underutilized, whatever. So you just keep adding people like that. And with Edge as the leader, it makes perfect sense. It's such a great idea. And then when they inexplicably like betrayed Edge, it's like, well, now it's just dumb. They're just like a mid-card stable with no real thread running through them. And so this is all work that has to be done to rehabilitate what they are. And, you know, I mean, it's not where it needs to be yet, but I still think it could get there if they make some, you know, good decisions in the next month or two.
As we have said, that I think the company is being directed right now creatively by someone who, you know, will make better decisions, sees better long term, isn't going to just kind of rely on simple whims. And I think the product still remains on a real high trajectory. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to have some season premiere, and we're going to see DX. So anyone he was, you know, we're going to get some nostalgia mixed in well. Ali, Ali, final thought before we get out of here about the product and what your thoughts are.
Oh man, final thoughts. Honestly, I'm not thinking too hard about it. I am enjoying WWE again. There was a long time that I could not watch it. And there's still things that annoy me. There's so many commercial breaks and so many recaps, but the matches are better, the storylines are more coherent, and it's nice, like harmless fun, which is something I love in today's dystopian world. I love turning it on and just chilling and not having to think too hard about it. So grateful for that. Final thoughts, I would say I'm here for Rhea Ripley. Not into Dom Dom, but I do think it's funny. And yeah, I'm excited to keep following Sami Zayn.
Yeah, for sure. Well, guys, thank you again for joining us again. This was episode 3. We're going to do this every Tuesday night. One or both of these fine gentlemen hopefully will be with me each week as we talk about WWE. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that the professional wrestling has deep, deep roots in Florida. It's got, you know, Daytona and Tampa. There's a lot of ex-wrestlers who live down there and a lot of great wrestling fans. So thoughts are with all those guys who are about to get hit by a hurricane. Please heed all warnings. Do your best to take care of yourselves. And we'll be ready to help out, help clean up and help out anyone who's going to get impacted by this. But so stay safe down there. We will see you guys next week. On the Thursday show, we always count out 1, 2, 3, but on this show, it's just too much. We got to tap out. We got to submit. So thank you guys. We'll see you next week. Have a great one. Peace.